I stood in the doorway of my modest apartment, staring at the two figures slumped on my welcome mat. My son Marcus sat with his back against the wall, my 5-year-old granddaughter Emma asleep in his lap, her little hand clutching a stuffed rabbit. 3 suitcases surrounded them like a barricade. Marcus? I kept my voice low so I wouldn't wake Emma. What are you doing here? It's Tuesday. Shouldn't you be at the firm? He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a boy who'd fallen off his bike. Defeat. Pure, crushing defeat. I got let go, Dad. His voice cracked. Charles fired me this morning, said I didn't fit the culture anymore. Charles, my son's father-in-law, the man who'd looked down his nose at me at Marcus's wedding 7 years ago, making it perfectly clear that his daughter Victoria was marrying beneath her station. Come inside. I grabbed the nearest suitcase. Emma needs a proper bed. Once we got Emma settled in my room, Marcus and I sat at my small kitchen table. The place was cramped. Nothing like the penthouse Marcus had been living in with Victoria and Emma. I'd sold my bigger place 3 years ago, telling Marcus I wanted to simplify in my retirement. He'd believed me. Tell me everything, I said. Marcus stared into the cup of coffee I'd poured him. Charles owns the firm. You know that. He gave me the associate position when Victoria and I got married. I thought I'd earned it, that I was good at what I did. What happened? This morning, Charles called me into his office. Victoria was there. They'd been discussing me, apparently, making decisions about my future. Charles said that after careful consideration, they decided I wasn't partner material, that I didn't have the breeding for it. Those were his actual words, Dad. Breeding. Like I'm a dog. My hands tightened around my mug, but I kept my expression neutral. Victoria agreed with him. Said she'd been thinking about it too, about what kind of life she wanted for Emma. She said Emma deserved better than to grow up around someone with my background, someone whose father was just a retired factory supervisor, living in a studio apartment. There it was, the real Charles Winchester coming through. I'd known it at the wedding, when he'd pulled me aside and told me he expected me to know my place in Emma's life, when he'd suggested I might want to skip certain family events so I wouldn't embarrass them. Where's Victoria now? I asked. At the penthouse, with Charles. He's helping her prepare the divorce papers. I have 72 hours to collect my things. Marcus's voice dropped to almost a whisper. She's keeping Emma, Dad. Charles already has lawyers. He says with his resources and my lack of prospects, no judge would give me custody. He said bloodlines matter in court too. I took a slow breath. And what did you tell them? I told them I'd fight for my daughter. Charles laughed. Asked me with what money? What lawyer would I hire? How would I even afford an apartment? Marcus looked at me with those defeated eyes again. He's right, isn't he? I've got nothing. I was making 6 figures, but it all went to the lifestyle Victoria wanted. I've got maybe $5,000 in savings. That won't even cover first month's rent in a decent place. You've got more than that, I said quietly. I'm not though, am I? If I was talented, I'd have made it on my own. Charles gave me everything. The job, the apartment, the connections. Without him, I'm nothing. I recognized that voice. The voice of my son who'd internalized every subtle dig, every backhanded compliment, every reminder that he'd married up and should be grateful. 7 years of psychological warfare from Charles Winchester had done its work. Listen to me. I reached across the table and gripped his shoulder. You're going to stay here as long as you need. Tomorrow, you're going to start looking for a real job, not one handed to you by your father-in-law, one you earn. Dad, I can't just. Yes, you can, and you will, because your daughter is watching. And I'll be damned if Emma grows up thinking her father is the broken man Charles wants you to be. That night, after Marcus fell asleep on my couch, I sat in the dark and made a phone call. Thomas, it's me. I need you to activate the contingency plan. Already? My attorney's voice was amused. I thought you were going to give it another year. Charles accelerated the timeline. He fired Marcus today, went for full humiliation. And the daughter-in-law? Complicit. Maybe even the instigator. Your call, Richard. But once we start, there's no stopping it. I looked at my son, sleeping fitfully on the couch, at the closed door where my granddaughter dreamed innocent dreams. Start it. Charles wants to talk about bloodlines? Let's show him what my bloodline is really made of. The next morning, I made pancakes. Emma woke up confused about why she was at Grandpa's house, but the promise of chocolate chips in her breakfast distracted her. Marcus looked like he'd barely slept. I need you to do me a favor, I told him as Emma watched cartoons. Don't contact Victoria or Charles for 1 week. Can you do that? Dad, I can't just. 1 week. I know it's hard, but you need space to think clearly. They're counting on you being desperate, making mistakes. Don't give them that. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. What am I supposed to do for a week? You're going to remember who you were before you met Victoria. The Marcus who graduated top of his class, who worked at the public defender's office because he believed in justice, not just money. I refilled his coffee. That Marcus is still in there. Charles just buried him under 7 years of expensive suits and self-doubt. For the next 3 days, I watched my son slowly come back to life. He took Emma to the park. He updated his resume. He reached out to old law school contacts, the ones he'd abandoned when he entered Charles's world. On day 4, something changed. Marcus came home from a coffee meeting with an old colleague, and there was light in his eyes again. Dad, you remember Jenkins? From the PD's office? He started his own firm. Civil rights cases. He wants me to interview. That's good, I said carefully. It's not corporate law. It doesn't pay what Charles was giving me. But Dad, we talked for 2 hours about actual law, about cases that matter. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Then take the interview. But the custody battle, Charles will use it against me. Say I went from 6 figures to barely making rent. Let him try. Emma needs a father who's happy and whole, not one who's wealthy and hollow. On day 5, Victoria called. She wanted Marcus back. Charles had reconsidered the divorce, she said. Marcus could return to the firm, keep the apartment, everything would go back to normal. All he had to do was sign an agreement acknowledging that Charles would have primary input on Emma's upbringing and education. Just a formality, Victoria had said. Marcus hung up on her. I'm taking the job with Jenkins, he told me. We'll find a place. Maybe not in the penthouse district, but somewhere good. Somewhere real. I smiled. I'm proud of you, son. On day 6, I paid Charles Winchester a visit. His office building was one of those glass towers in the financial district, the kind that looked like it was designed to intimidate. I walked past the reception desk in my worn jacket and canvas shoes, looking every bit the retired factory worker Charles thought I was. I'm here to see Charles Winchester, I told the receptionist. She looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. Do you have an appointment? No. But tell him Richard Foster is here. He'll want to see me. 5 minutes later, I was in his corner office. All mahogany and leather and floor-to-ceiling windows with a view that probably cost more per month than most people's mortgages. Charles sat behind his desk, looking at me the way you'd look at something unpleasant you'd found on your shoe. Richard, what brings you here? Come to beg for your son's job back? No, I said simply. I came to give you a courtesy warning. He actually laughed. A warning? About what? I know about the Meridian deal. The laughter stopped. His eyes narrowed. What about it? I know you've been cooking the books, moving money through shell companies, inflating the valuations. The SEC doesn't know yet, but they will. Charles stood up slowly. Are you threatening me? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I could destroy you with a phone call. Destroy what exactly? I spread my hands. I live in a studio apartment. I drive a 15-year-old Honda. I have a pension that covers my needs. What exactly are you going to take from me, Charles? His face reddened. Get out of my office. In a moment. First, the custody suit. You're going to drop it. Victoria can pursue divorce if she wants, but you'll agree to fair joint custody. Marcus gets Emma at least 50% of the time. Or what? You'll go to the SEC with your fantasy story? Without proof? They'd laugh you out of the building. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and placed it on his desk. Not a fantasy. I have 12 years of documentation. Every shell company, every fraudulent invoice, every offshore account, it's all here. How did you? He stopped himself. You're bluffing. You're a retired factory supervisor. You wouldn't even know what you were looking at. You're right about one thing. I was a factory supervisor for about 6 months in 1985. Before that, I was an SEC investigator. After that, I was a private forensic accountant. I've spent 35 years tracking exactly the kind of money laundering you've been running. I specialized in it. I watched the color drain from his face. The Meridian deal closes in 4 days, I continued. If that deal goes through with your fraudulent numbers, you're not just looking at SEC fines. You're looking at federal prison. 20 years minimum. Why? Charles's voice was hoarse. Why are you doing this? You told my son his bloodline wasn't worthy. You made my granddaughter believe her father was an embarrassment. You spent 7 years breaking down one of the best men I know, just because he didn't come from money. I picked up the flash drive. I'm giving you a choice, Charles. Drop the custody case. Give Marcus a fair divorce settlement. Write him a recommendation letter for his new job. Do these things, and this flash drive disappears. And if I don't, then on Friday morning, I hand this to my former colleagues at the SEC. Your deal collapses. Your firm gets raided. Your daughter gets to explain to Emma why Grandpa's going to federal prison. Your choice. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Charles? The factory supervisor story? That was for Marcus. I wanted him to build his own life, make his own success, without thinking he had a father with connections he could rely on. I wanted him to be strong on his own. Turns out he is. No thanks to you. Charles called the next morning. He'd agreed to all my terms. The custody case was dropped. Victoria would proceed with an amicable divorce. Marcus would get fair parenting time and a reasonable settlement. And Charles had written a glowing recommendation letter for Marcus's application to Jenkins's firm. There's one more thing, Charles said stiffly. Victoria wants to apologize to Marcus. In person. That's between them, I said. I'm staying out of it. When I told Marcus about the meeting, he stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're a forensic accountant? You investigated the SEC? Dad, you told me you worked at a brake pad factory. I did, for 6 months. Hated every minute of it, but it taught me to appreciate what I had. I sat across from him. Marcus, I had money, still do, enough that you and Emma would never have to work. But I saw what happened to people who gave their children everything. They raised adults who couldn't stand on their own 2 feet. So you lied to me? I withheld information. There's a difference. Everything else was true. I retired. I simplified my life. I just didn't mention that I'd spent 3 decades building a portfolio that would make Charles Winchester's net worth look like pocket change. Marcus was quiet for a long time. You could have helped me. All these years, Victoria and Charles making me feel small, you could have just told them the truth. I could have. But then you'd never have known what you were capable of on your own. I leaned forward. Marcus, you got into Columbia Law on merit. You graduated in the top 10%. You won cases at the PD's office that seasoned attorneys said were unwinnable. None of that had anything to do with Charles or with me. That was all you. I needed you to remember that. By letting me think you were poor, by letting you think I was normal. That we were normal. So you'd build a life based on what you could do, not on what your father could provide. I paused. Did it work? He thought about it. Really thought about it. Then, slowly, he smiled. Yeah, Dad. It worked. I'm taking the job with Jenkins. Emma and I are getting a 2-bedroom in Queens. It's not fancy, but it's ours. And for the first time in 7 years, I feel like I can breathe. 2 weeks later, Marcus started his new job. A month after that, the Meridian deal collapsed when Charles's partner discovered the accounting irregularities and reported them himself, trying to avoid criminal liability. Charles Winchester's firm dissolved in the scandal. He avoided prison, but lost everything else. Victoria came by one Saturday to pick up Emma for her weekend. She looked different, smaller somehow, less polished. Richard, she said to me while Marcus was getting Emma's bag ready. Did you know? About Charles and the fraud? I suspected, I said carefully. He says you threatened him, that you had evidence. I had concerns. I shared them. She studied me with new eyes, seeing me clearly, maybe for the first time. You're not what I thought you were. Few people are. That's something you learn when you stop judging them by their addresses and bank accounts. She flinched. I'm sorry. For what it's worth. The way I treated Marcus. The things I let my father say about you and Emma. I'm sorry. Tell Marcus. Not me. And mean it. She did tell him, that evening when she brought Emma back. I don't know what they said to each other, but when Marcus came back inside, he looked lighter. 3 months later, Marcus won his first major case at Jenkins's firm, a civil rights lawsuit against a corporation accused of discrimination. The settlement was substantial, and Marcus's name was in the legal journals. We celebrated at a small Italian restaurant in Queens, just the three of us. Emma had spaghetti sauce on her face and was telling me an elaborate story about her new school. She's happy, Marcus observed. Happier than she was in the penthouse. She's got friends in the building. Normal kids. Not just the children of Charles's business associates. And you? I asked. I'm good, Dad. Really good. Jenkins made me junior partner. We're taking on cases that matter. I get to see Emma every week, and I sleep better at night than I have in years. No regrets about the lifestyle? Marcus looked at Emma, covered in sauce and giggling at her own joke. The lifestyle was never mine. It was Charles's. Victoria's. I was just living in someone else's idea of success. He met my eyes. I've got my own now. It looks different than I thought it would, but it's mine. That means something. It means everything, I said quietly. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, can I spend the night at your house? I want to build that puzzle we started. Of course, sweetheart. Marcus shook his head, smiling. Dad, about the whole forensic accountant thing. Did you really investigate Charles all along? I did my due diligence when you told me you were getting married. Found some irregularities, but nothing actionable at the time. I've been watching him for 7 years, waiting for him to make a big enough mistake. I sipped my water. The Meridian deal was that mistake. You protected me. I gave you space to protect yourself. There's a difference. I just made sure Charles couldn't destroy you when you finally stood up to him. Marcus was quiet, then asked the question I'd been waiting for. How much money do you actually have? Enough, Dad. Enough that you and Emma will never have to worry. Enough that's already in a trust for Emma's education. Enough that when you're ready to buy a real home, not an apartment, you'll have a down payment waiting. I held up a hand before he could protest. But not enough that you get to stop working. Not enough that you get to coast. You're going to build your career at Jenkins on your own merit. You're going to win cases because you're a damn good lawyer. And when Emma's older, you're going to tell her that her grandfather was proud of the man her father became, not the money he married into. Emma interrupted us again, this time to show me a drawing she'd made on her napkin. It was the three of us, stick figures holding hands. She'd drawn hearts around all of us. That's beautiful, Em, I told her. It's our family, she said simply. You and Daddy and me. That's all we need, right? I looked at Marcus. He was watching his daughter with an expression I recognized, the same one I'd worn when I first held him as a baby. Pure, uncomplicated love. That's right, sweetheart, Marcus said. That's all we need. 3 months after that, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Foster, this is Robert Chen. I'm representing Victoria Winchester in her divorce proceedings. She asked me to reach out to you. About what? She'd like to renegotiate the custody arrangement. She's proposing primary custody go to your son, with her taking Emma alternate weekends and holidays. I was silent, processing. She said to tell you she's been in therapy. That she's realized some things about her father and about herself. She thinks Emma needs to be with Marcus full-time. She wants to be part of her daughter's life, but she acknowledges that Marcus is the better primary parent. What changed? I asked. Between you and me, Mr. Foster? Charles Winchester is facing a shareholder lawsuit. His assets are frozen. Victoria's trust fund was tied up in his company's stock. She went from wealthy to barely solvent overnight. He paused. She could fight for custody, use what money she has left, but she told me she doesn't want to put Emma through that. She said her daughter deserves better than to be a pawn in an adult power struggle. Put Marcus on the line with her. Let them work it out directly. They did work it out. Marcus got primary custody. Victoria got generous visitation. And Emma, blessed Emma, got to stay in her routine with her father while still seeing her mother regularly. I thought that was the end of it. Then, 6 months later, Charles Winchester showed up at my apartment. He looked 20 years older than the last time I'd seen him. The smugness was gone. The condescension had been replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said when I opened the door. "I just want 5 minutes." I let him in, but I didn't offer him coffee. "I lost everything," Charles said, standing awkwardly in my small living room. "The firm, the house, the reputation, all of it gone. I'm aware. Victoria's in therapy. She told me what she realized, that I taught her to value all the wrong things, that I poisoned her marriage because I couldn't stand the idea of my daughter with someone I considered beneath us. About everything. Why are you really here, Charles?" He pulled out a photograph. It was of Emma, from her birthday party last month. Marcus had invited Victoria. I'd been there too. In the picture, all 3 of us were laughing at something Emma had said. "Victoria sent this to me. She's not invited me to see Emma in 8 months. Says I need to prove I've changed first. That Emma doesn't need my toxicity in her life." His hand shook slightly. "I'm 72 years old, Richard. I built an empire, and I lost it all because I was too proud to see that the real wealth was my family. My daughter doesn't speak to me. My granddaughter doesn't know me. I'm alone in a world I thought I ruled." I took the photograph, looked at it. Emma's joy was genuine. Marcus looked happy. Even Victoria was smiling. A real smile. Not the practiced one she'd worn throughout her marriage. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I don't know," Charles said honestly. "Maybe I just needed to say it out loud to someone who saw through me from the beginning. You knew what I was. You tried to warn Marcus. I should have listened." "Yes, you should have." He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, your son is doing well. I've been following his career. That discrimination case he won last month made national news. He's become everything I said he couldn't be. He was always capable of it. You just needed him to doubt himself so he'd stay dependent on you. I know that now." Charles opened the door. After he left, I called Marcus and told him about the visit. "What do you think I should do?" Marcus asked. "Part of me wants to tell Emma about her grandfather, but another part remembers everything he did. That's not my choice to make," I told him. "But I'll say this. People can change, if they want to badly enough. The question is whether Charles wants to, or whether he's just lonely and looking for an easy redemption. How do I tell the difference? Time. If he's serious, he'll do the work. Not for access to Emma, just because it's the right thing to do. If he's not serious, he'll give up when he realizes forgiveness isn't automatic." A year later, I got a letter from Charles. He'd enrolled in therapy, sold his remaining assets, and donated most of the money to a scholarship fund for first-generation law students. He was working as a consultant now, teaching business ethics at a community college. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he wrote. Asked why she didn't have a grandpa on her mother's side like she has you. Victoria didn't know what to tell her. "I'm writing to ask what you think I should do." I showed the letter to Marcus. "It's up to you," I said. "But I'll tell you what I told you before. People can change." Marcus thought about it for a long time. Then he picked up the phone. 6 months after that, I watched Charles Winchester sit on my apartment floor playing blocks with Emma. He was careful with her, gentle in a way I'd never seen him be with anyone. When she knocked over his tower and laughed, he laughed too. A real laugh. Not the calculating sound I remembered. "Higher, Grandpa Charles," Emma demanded. "Make it taller." Okay, he said, stacking blocks with shaking hands that weren't as steady as they used to be. "But if it falls?" "That's on you, kiddo." Marcus stood next to me, watching. "You think he's really changed?" "I think he's trying. That's all any of us can do." "Did you ever tell him? About the money? About who you really are?" "No. And I'm not going to. Let him think he was outsmarted by a retired factory supervisor. It's good for his humility." Marcus laughed, a sound that still made me happy to hear. "You know what's funny? I spent years thinking I needed Charles's approval, his validation, his world. Turns out all I needed was right here, in this cramped apartment with my dad, who taught me that character matters more than a portfolio. The apartment's not that cramped, I protested. Dad, I can hear your neighbor's TV through the walls. That's Mr. Rodriguez. He's hard of hearing. I don't mind. Marcus shook his head, grinning. You could afford a penthouse 10 times the size of the one Victoria and I had, couldn't you? Probably. But you choose this. I choose enough. There's a difference between enough and excess. I learned that a long time ago. I'm just glad you're learning it now. Emma came running over, dragging Charles by the hand. Daddy! Grandpa Richard! Look what me and Grandpa Charles built. The tower of blocks stood impressively tall, teetering but holding. That's amazing, Em, Marcus said, crouching down to her level. You did that together? Yep, Grandpa Charles said. Teamwork makes it stronger. Is that true, Daddy? Marcus looked at me, then at Charles, then back at his daughter. Yeah, sweetheart, that's true. Teamwork makes everything stronger. Later, after Emma was asleep and Charles had gone home and Marcus was getting ready to head back to his own apartment in Queens, my son pulled me into a hug. Thank you, he said, for everything, for letting me fail, for letting me find my own way, for protecting me even when I didn't know I needed protecting. That's what fathers do, I said simply. Is it? Because Charles didn't. Charles is learning. Better late than never. I pulled back and looked at my son. You're a good man, Marcus. A good father, a good lawyer. None of that came from me, or from Charles, or from anyone else. That's just who you are. All I did was make sure you got the chance to remember it. After he left, I sat in my worn armchair and looked around my small apartment, at the photos of Emma on the walls, at Marcus's old Little League trophy on the shelf, at the life I'd built that was rich in all the ways that mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Emma wants to know if you'll come to her school play next month. She's playing a tree. I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Worth isn't measured in square footage or stock portfolios or corner offices with views of the city. It's measured in Saturday mornings building block towers with your granddaughter, in watching your son stand tall on his own 2 feet, in knowing that when you're gone, you'll leave behind people who are strong and kind and whole. Charles Winchester learned that lesson the hard way. I'd learned it decades ago, back when I was young and hungry and thought success meant climbing higher than everyone else. Turns out, real success is knowing when you have enough and who you want to share it with. And on that measure, I'm the wealthiest man I know.